Hello again everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's starting to get near the end of another week, which means only one thing, and that means it's time for a look forward to round 6 of Super Rugby. But of course, like all the other weeks of this series, we're going to be having a look back at round 5 to see just what happened last weekend before we have a look forward and see what I think is going to happen this weekend coming up very, very soon. Very, very quickly, these weeks are flying by. Can you believe already 6 weeks into the competition? And as always, when we kick off these episodes, there's only one thing we need to recap on, and that is yellow and red cards. So let's bring them up there now and see what we've got. Yeah, can you believe it? Can you believe the astronomical amount of cards we have so far? 54 yellow cards in just round 6. That is insanely high amount of cards. Of course, 3 red cards already as well. Oh, the more we talk about this, it could go on forever. But amazingly, 54 and 3 is the count after just 6 rounds of competition. There was a huge amount in round 5 as well, and it all started off on Friday night, where the Crusaders, who have been the comeback kings of recent weeks, had a task ahead of them that they really needed to fulfill in emphatic fashion. And they did that as well, putting on a masterclass display against a pretty average Force team as well, putting a lot of points on them. Really, there was no chance in that game whatsoever for the Force. They were comprehensively outplayed from start to finish. There was no in-between in that match with the Crusaders. There was no comebacks near the end. There was even no glimpse of hope for the Force whatsoever, and they ran out big winners, big tries, big points. 45-17, a thrashing win for the Crusaders, and now they really start to look dangerous with that big win against the Force, kicking off round number 5. Following that, of course, we made our way across to Australia, where this game was ridiculous. It was the Melbourne Rebels versus the Waratahs, and I finally felt after the first 40 minutes of this game, I actually enjoyed watching an Australian team play rugby. Now, they've been pretty average this year, no one will really argue that one, but the Rebels, man, they put on a show. They looked fantastic. They were attacking, they were full of flair, they looked amazing. But the second half come around and that quickly went out the windows as the Waratahs started to play this mindless, mind-numbing style of play that they seem to be doing lately. In the end, they were rescued by a yellow card, slowly clawing their way back, and then right at the death of the match, there was a yellow card to the Rebels that ultimately killed the hope off that they could hold on for that victory. I would have backed them to do it if they stayed at 15 men, but of course, break the rules, you got to do the time, and that's what happened. Ultimately, they paid the ultimate price, going down to the Waratahs in a late try to seal that victory, 32-25. It was a great first half of rugby. The second, however, had a little bit to be desired, I think. But the Waratahs get a win, and well, it's another win for the Australian Conference, which, to be fair, looks horrible when it comes to that W category. Things kick back into gear on Saturday night when the Blues were in action against the Bulls, and I thought this should be a pretty easy victory for the Blues, and to be fair to the Blues as well, they played like that. They were pretty lethargic, kind of expecting that the result would come to them within time, but the Bulls weren't that bad for probably the first 50 or so minutes before they started to make the changes. We'll talk about that later on with the Bulls in their next matchup, but I think once the changes come, the changes happened, the Bulls fell away, the Blues started to gain that real dominance that they had been looking for over the whole match so far, and that is where she ultimately blew out. But I thought the Blues would have been expecting a lot better. They played as if they had already won the game before it had started, which was, I think, pretty poor on their part, but they did come out for a win. The Bulls fell apart late on, 38-14 the final score in that one. A good win for the Blues, but, still a few areas of concern for the Auckland franchise. Following that again, we went to Australia with the Brumbies, who have been the most impressive looking Australian team despite all their changes in the off-season. They're up against the Highlanders, a struggling side from New Zealand that really hasn't hit their straps due to the real hamstringing that they are getting ironically, from their injury. So this is a team that's really struggling to put 15 men on the field. We're running out of rugby players in New Zealand. It's almost a case that I'm going to be playing fly half for them in the coming weeks if this keeps up. I thought they put in a good effort. They were very tenacious on defence. They had a lot of hard work to do, and ultimately they got the reward that they deserved. I'm happy to see a good return to some form for Aaron Smith, but more on the Highlanders later on in their round 6 clash. Ultimately, the Brumbies, I thought very much in that game as a scoreline represented at the end, 18-13 to the Highlanders. Could have gone either way, as if you've watched that game, you would have known the Brumbies were right there on their line for a good portion of the last 10-15 minutes of that matchup, if not the last quarter of the game. So could have gone the other way, but the Highlanders, to their credit again, put on a great defensive display to hold on to the bitter end. Okay, we followed that up off to the Sunwolves. Now, wow, I did see this match and it was one of the most remarkable games I've ever seen. The Sunwolves, a team you normally see, good on attack, but ultimately get destroyed by their lack of defence. Well, this game against the Stormers, I've seen nothing like it. I've seen nothing like it from the Sunwolves. Their attack was so good. It was almost like the Rebels. If we could have combined those two first halves, one of those two teams would have won, because the Sunwolves were tearing the Stormers to absolute ribbons. Every time they had the ball, they were making a line break. I was watching that going, wow, undefeated Stormers against the Sunwolves, they could actually do something here. They were scoring, but again, their defence was letting them down. The Stormers eventually, in the end, did come away with that matchup. They did get a bit of authority towards the end of the game and come away, not big winners, but a big score. 44-31 the final score. The Stormers taking the points, but boy, oh boy, that was an entertaining matchup between the two teams. The Sunwolves, very impressive on attack, like we've already talked about, but their defence found wanting once again. Following that now, we went to the Southern Kings, who are up against the Lions. And there's not much you can really say about this one. We know what the Southern Kings have been about. They've been poor, they've been pretty bad, and the Lions, they have that ability to score a lot of points very quickly, and that's really what they did. A huge win for the Lions. They stacked on the points. The Kings, they can score tries as well against the teams who aren't probably defensively as good as others, but it's the attack that they can't handle. When the Lions put them to the sword, big points for them, 42 points to 19. The Kings continue one dreadful step after another, and now with the other new teams, you got to say the Sunwolves, after their performance against the Stormers, you got to say the Kings are almost out on their own as underperforming team from Super Rugby. Okay, still in South Africa, we have the Cheetahs at home to the Sharks. Now, this was an interesting one. This was a tough one to pick as well. I do like the way the Sharks play, very defensive orientated, but their attack, you can tell, is progressing quite nicely, and it works for them, and they get the results because of it, mainly on the back of some good defensive work. And this one against the Cheetahs, a team who's again ravaged by injury. They were struggling over recent weeks to really put a team with any continuity together. Things seem to come better for them, then they get worse, then they get better, but they perform pretty well here against the Sharks. But I think in the end they'll be extremely disappointed they didn't come away with this victory. A very topsy-turvy match, both sides having huge chances to take the game away from the other. But again, like the others, there was one play that was going to make a big difference in this match, and it was made by the Sharks. They scored a couple of pretty critical tries at a really important time of the match, and that left the Cheetahs with almost too much to do to get back in the game. They did fight back hard, scoring late points, and then they threw away a chance to take a losing bonus point, which was very, very bizarre. You'd think if you're going to get anything out of a match, a bonus point is better than nothing. They threw away a big chance to take that. In the end, they went down that one by 8 points, 38-30. Again, a shot at goal with time up on the clock. Why wouldn't you take the 3? Take the point. You can't win the match with a converted try anyway. It really does baffle the mind. The Cheetahs, a team that continue to really baffle my mind as well. Bizarre things from the Cheetahs, so good but so bad on other days as well. Final match of the round, and this was the Jaguares up against the Reds. Now, I gave the Reds no chance. Neither did the Jaguares. They pretty much put in a good professional display against the Reds. The Reds have been dreadful all season. It continues on. Just 8 points. You know, that's pretty bad. Attack is bad. Defense is pretty bad. De La Fuente, great name, great player. He performed very well and is a key man now for this Jaguares team as they continue to impress. And now, I think they're starting to look like they're in a place on the table where they belong and where they should be as well. 22-8, they took out that game against the Reds. Good display from the Jaguares and good to see them getting wins on the trot. So, the picks, of course. How did your picks go over the weekend? Mine weren't too bad, actually. I'm pretty confident we might be rising up the ladder here. So let's check out the SuperBru picks, fantasy teams, and see how the ladder looks. Alrighty, so we kick things off here with the Prediction League, and we have no change at the top of the leaderboard. Caleb, 42N, still sits at the top. Another good week by him, but the competition is coming thick and fast. In second, it's the yellow cap holder. Top score of round 5 going to Nate's. And then in third, coming up 7 spots, is 3 Crowns 1. So second and third getting some big raises up from 9 places and 7 places for second and third respectively. Going through the leaderboard, we have another big jump up of 8 down here in 8th position. It's Devon going up 11. That's a big jump up there as well. More up 11 from Jono, 28. And then we got some big droppers here. Some drops of 13 and 11 and 12 up here for Canadian Pop as well. That's nice. The Scottish Cannon down 7 places this week, down to the mid-20s, 25th spot for him. We have Brett Hartley, of course, was hot to trot from the start, but now is starting to fall, down 4 places for him. We have Ian down in 34th, who's dropped 10 spots now and gaining the wooden spoon as well. Where has my team ended up as we go through the rest? I'm not even there, but we have some newcomers to the league down the bottom. Driving Mall, welcome along, thanks for joining up as well. And the reviewer, of course, joining the league as well. So a couple of newcomers, but they've already played a lot of games as well, so expect them to join into the league hopefully very, very soon. Here I am, 35th, up 3 spots, looking to make a more of an increase this weekend. Okay, so on the front of the fantasy teams, it seems we're having some problems getting an update on the scores just before the weekend kicks underway. There's no leaderboard here, no table. Hopefully this will be fixed up very soon, but if you want to see how your team's going, you may just have to log in yourself and see what's happening. I have no idea what's going on here, but at the time of recording this, I've got nothing. There's nothing there at all. All I can tell you is my team is up 29th out of 50, and we moved up. That's all I can about tell you from there. Unfortunately, nothing's coming up from the leaderboard. Hopefully by the time we're recording this, we might have something. Otherwise, we may just have to wait till next week for an update. Apologies about that, but we'll see if we can get something working soon. Okay, on to round 6 now, and there's 4 teams who are going to be missing action this week through the bye. They are the Brumbies, the Jaguares, the Southern Kings, and the Sunwolves. So 4 teams missing out, so that means we only have 7 matches to go through this week, so let's take a look at them. It all kicks off on Friday night with the Highlanders at home. They're up against the Rebels. Now this is an interesting one. The Highlanders, of course, injury ravaged. We've seen a great first half from the Rebels last week as well, but I think what we learned last week was that the Highlanders found a great piece of heart, a great technique of working their defence, and they were very, very strong against the Brumbies, especially on the road as well. And 3 matches now away, so it's 3 weeks in a row they've been away from home on the road, which is very, very tough for them. You know, it's always tough to win on your road trips. They come back with a victory against the Brumbies last week, very, very important for them as well, and I think coming back home is going to be a big addition to increasing how this team performs. Speaking of performances, Aaron Smith, I mentioned him before, seeing his form increase gradually each week is so encouraging, not only for the Highlanders, but also for the All Blacks later on the season as well. He is an integral part about these 2 teams, and I think it's so important that he is there in tip-top shape for both of these 2 sides throughout the season. The team is still a bit of a patch-up job though, but they seem to still know how to make it work, which is very Highlanders of this Highlanders team as well. They're the only side that can really patch up some random guys from club rugby and make things work. They've got a new man starting on the open side today. They also have the younger brother of Lima Stopawanga starting on the bench as well. Former NRL player. That's going to be interesting to see how he performs in this atmosphere of Super Rugby as well. As for the Rebels, their opponents, they're becoming frustrating to me, I think. Their performance for 70 minutes last week against the Waratahs was brilliant. You know, you wouldn't have watched that and said, yeah, this is a team who hasn't won a match all season. You wouldn't have watched that and gone, yeah, these guys are under consideration for the chop. They were exciting. They were absolutely brilliant. I think that was the best 40 minutes of rugby I've seen from an Australian team for quite some time as well. But to choke and lose it like they did in that last 10 minutes, that really was kind of painful to watch because of how well they had played. To turn from so good to so bad so quickly is really, really disappointing to see, and really that does show just why they are bottom of the table and still without a win. So you got to think that also has to grow on this team mentally. The fact that they haven't won a match, the fact that they should have beaten the Waratahs as well, not to mention games before this. They've improved from round one where they got smashed by the Blues. Definitely on the improve as well. But you just can't see the Rebels winning on the road. You've got to look at it and say at home, yeah, they're a good possibility because they're a bit stronger at home, crowd behind them, you know, all that sort of home stuff. But on the road, you know, going somewhere else against a team like the Highlanders that just seem to have, you know, that little bit of difference, especially against the overseas teams, that X factor just breeds throughout that whole squad. And against the Rebels, I just can't see things going very well for the team. Unless they play in 80 minutes like they did against the Waratahs in that first 40, that could be a bloody good matchup, but I just can't see them doing it 2 weeks in a row. My pick for this one is Highlanders by 13, if not even more. I'm going to go with 13 because I think the Rebels, you know, might be good enough to give them a bit of a tickle up. But ultimately, in the end, I think the Highlanders will come away with a comfortable victory at Forsyth Bar. Okay, so on to our second match of the weekend. It's the Blues versus the Force, and it's very much a match really like the Highlanders and the Rebels. And like I spoke of before, the Blues seemed expectant of their win against the Bulls the week before. I thought they were almost disappointing. They underestimated their opponent, which is the worst thing you can do, especially to a South African team, especially to an Australian team, even more so a New Zealand team. Any team you underestimate is asking for trouble, and they just about got it delivered fully in their face as well. It took them a long time to really hit any kind of skill, and I think the Bulls lost that match more than the Blues really won it. I think the Bulls really they're going all right, they're going good, competing, and then they just fell apart completely. That's when the Blues took control. So I don't know if I can really lay too much credit onto how that result went on to the Blues. But the pressure now, though, firmly on the Blues. If they want to keep any hope of playoff dreams alive, they need to keep winning. And they cannot afford to do what they did last week again this week against the Western Force. Now, again, not a team you'd expect to win, but they have the capabilities to upset, and the Blues aren't the best team in the world either. So you've got to think the Force will go into this with a chance, knowing how the Blues played last week. If they can play with that expectation, that almost overconfidence that they're going to get the result, the Force will be sniffing around opportunities and chances to capitalise on that if it does happen yet again. The Force, they've had a terrible season. Their season's gone pretty badly. They've had one win, which is one more than the Rebels. They can at least take that to the bank as some credit to have on their side, but massively outplayed by the Crusaders last weekend. There's not much more you can say about it than that. And of course, with all the talk in the media recently about the cuts and the changes to Super Rugby, there's one team from Australia who has, well, firmly their head on the chopping block, and that is the Western Force. Pressure on them for that side of things, although who really knows what's going to happen, but it's pressure. It's that, you know, that sense in their mental ability that they have to win. Is it going to go for them? Is it going to go against them? Is it too late for them? What do they have to play for? There's a lot of questions that'll be swirling around in the Force's head, and you've got to think, how much of them is really going to be concentrating fully on this match? A lot of these guys will be going, I have to secure my future. If the Force aren't going to be around, what do I do? Things are happening here. The Blues, they are a lot more directly minded at the moment, and they can afford to be. But they still need to play a full 80 minutes. A lot of these Force guys will be a bit more passionate about things. They'll be playing for their future, not only as a team, but as a personal side of things as well, which, you know, can make a player change quite considerably if they have their job on the line. Ultimately, though, I think the Blues are going to be too good for the Force, whether they play to their capabilities or not. I still think the Blues will have enough about them. I'm going to pick the Blues by 19 over the Force. It should be a comfortable win, but I expect it should be a fairly entertaining one, much like the Highlanders and the Rebels in the opening match of the round. Following that one now, we're off to Waikato, coming back to the Chiefs, who had the bye last weekend. They're up against the Bulls, of course, who played the Blues last weekend. So a bit of a New Zealand tour going on here for the Bulls at the moment. The most dreaded part of this season, no doubt, I would think. So returning from the bye here, the Chiefs, which is good. But the Chiefs are still one of only 3 undefeated teams in Super Rugby so far. And that, has to count for something against a team like the Bulls, who have really only struggled their way to 1 victory so far. So very contrasting sides of things. And if the Bulls are at home, you may say, yeah, there's a chance of an upset. But with the Chiefs at home, you've got to say there is 0 chance of anything weird happening for this one. The Chiefs have been too hard to break down. No one has even really got close almost to beating them. The Hurricanes, they were put away fairly comfortably as well. They had a really tough start to the season, the Chiefs, but they've put them all away easily now. And now you might say, looking at this fixtures list, that they've actually got a good chance here to capitalise on this with some games that aren't New Zealand derbies, and South African teams on tour never going to be at the top of their game. So you've got to say, for this, it should be an easy return back into regular Super Rugby after a week off for the Chiefs. A nice walk into the game, not going to be that white hot, must-win atmosphere for them. They should be able to ease in. I expect them to pull off a nice, easy victory as well against a poor travelling Bulls team. But you've got to look at the Bulls on the other side of the ledger. Pretty good for the first 50 minutes. Big noticeable change for them was when Pollard went off. Planned, not planned, whatever you want to call it, I don't really care. The fact of the matter is he went off and the game plan fell apart massively for the Bulls. They just weren't up to it the same as they were when Pollard was on the field. He was good. He was really good. His kicking game was outstanding. He was a threat on attack, and he guided his team around very, very nicely. Our replacements come on. They made a lot more errors. The kicking game went down the toilet. Penalties weren't making touch. Silly things like that. It really all just completely crumbled all over the pitch for the Bulls after that. And like I said before as well with the Blues, I think the Bulls lost that match more than the Blues won. I would have liked to have seen if that game could have stayed at that same level with the Bulls, if they could have kept that same intensity up, how that game would have gone, how the Blues would have reacted, rather than it just falling into place at the end like they kind of expected it to. It's a bit of a shame, although the Bulls could have actually, made a bit of a rumble in the Auckland suburbs up there and start to mix things up here, start to take a shape of an upset. They couldn't do it ultimately. Their subs were poor. They need to work on that as well. And it's really finally about the Bulls. Their creativeness seems to have gone out the window as well from last season, when we seen them trying long-range counterattacks, more attacking plays, and they weren't kicking things away so much. They were keen to play that attacking style of rugby. It didn't work out 100% of the time. It was a lot more attractive though, and they seem to be grasping more of a hold of it. It seems that's gone. We don't really see any of that against the Blues last weekend, and I fear that could really be detrimental for the Bulls. I enjoyed that Bulls style of play, but we just haven't seen it, and if they don't bring that against the Chiefs, well, are they even going to score any points? Bar the boot of Pollard, is he going to play 80 minutes? He's got to play at least 70 or 75 if there is to be a chance. Well, to be fair, he's got to play 80. He is their key man. He's just like taking out the key out of the lock. The door's not going to open. He is that main man. He needs to be around there for more. He's injury prone. He's still under a bit of a cloud, but how much do they rely on him is just amazing. If they lost him, oh, imagine that for the Bulls. Overall, I've got the Chiefs going to win this one by 22. Should be pretty straightforward for the Chiefs. Give them a bit of time to get back in the swing of things. Try and control the tempo of the game. The Bulls, again, with the bench coming on around the hour mark like they did against the Blues, probably will see that game die out to a nice peaceful finish with a big win for the Chiefs. Right, making our way to Australia now, and this one's interesting, isn't it? The Reds versus the Hurricanes. Well, I'm sorry, but the Reds are my failure of 2017. That's all I've really got to say about them. All the star signings, all the star names back, the big names, the big money signings, all that talk, they've been terrible. They've been pretty bad as well. Just one win as well, which is just remarkable that a team of that quality of player just can't seem to perform. I think out of all those big names, I'll probably only give Higginbotham any credit to playing very, very well at number 8. But when you look at the team, they have announced their team. They're one of the first as well to announce their team. I don't understand how they can leave out players like Frisbee and Hendrick Tui, of all people. Imagine their back row if they had Higginbotham and Tui in there. Oh, it would be quite good. But again, big names, no performances. I'm struggling to really see any increase in form or increase in fortune at all for this Reds team. They just can't seem to get any results. Of course, Cooper's still out of that red card suspension as well. He was a bit of a creative spark. They probably have missed a little bit from him, but they weren't really getting too much out of him anyway. They're struggling. They're really, really struggling. A couple of weeks away, of course, that won't help the cause either. They're returning home, which is always good to see, but it's a really tough fixtures list for the Reds to come home. Yes, we're home, finally. Here come the Hurricanes. Oh, shit. This is not going to be good for the Reds whatsoever. The Hurricanes, they're coming off the bye as well, which, you know, that could be a bit of an opening for the Reds if they consider that, you know, a team may start slowly like they do coming back from the bye. But you got to say, the Hurricanes have been fantastic. They've been in great form. They destroyed the Highlanders last time they were out as well. That was 2 rounds ago. They'll be rested, they'll be recovered, and their full team, you got to say, their full team has been working very, very well. The 4-pack has been going pretty good. The back line has been exceptional. Their centres, Lamape, you know, not really that big name. He's no Conrad Smith. He's definitely no Conrad Smith. More of a Ma'anonu type of player. And the centres, I mean, he's barnstorming, isn't he? Vince Arceau has been brilliant as well. They're scoring tries for fun. They are hard to stop. Are they really high-level quality players? I'm not too sure about that just yet, but in Super Rugby, they're performing brilliantly as well. The Barrett combination, Bowden and Geordie, sensational. Those two will be All Black brothers very, very soon. Imagine that, we might have 3 All Black Barretts. It's highly possible. I mean, Scott Barrett's already in there, Bodie Barrett's already in there, of course, just about first name on the team sheet. And then Geordie Barrett, let's be fair, he's not far away. He's already producing bits of magic, and he's not really fully adapted to the team or the level of rugby yet. You still see a few of those silly wee mistakes that, you know, you get away with at lower levels, but he's adapting well and he's still making those magic plays as well. I feel this one could go badly for the Reds. I really do. I think the Hurricanes could get their roll on and the Reds will just be like, nah, screw this, we're out of here. We're done, we're out. I've got the Canes a big win, 27 points over the Reds. Could be bad. It could be big, but it'll probably be entertaining, especially if you're not a Reds fan. That's my pick on it. Big win for the Hurricanes. Now we make our way over to South Africa for the first time. Amazingly, this is a very strange round, of course, with a couple of South African teams missing out. And of course, the Sunwolves and the Waratahs, they're pretty much over that side of the world as well. You know, there's 4 teams missing out. That's almost 2 South African fixtures through the night that we won't get to see. So it's not till late on Saturday till we see anything from South Africa. But the Stormers at home, back at home, of course, after that bit of a banana skin almost against the Sunwolves, but they're still yet to suffer defeat. They're flying under the radar. This is what I consider of the New Zealand teams who are almost out there going bang, 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 yeah, we're the best, we're creaming everyone, we are the teams to beat. New Zealand conference is the conference, but hold on a minute, the Stormers haven't lost yet either, and you may say the South African conference is a weaker, whatever you may say, they're still undefeated. Doesn't matter, still 0 losses. You play what's in front of you, and to come out with no losses, you've got to give them their props for that, and that is all you can do. They're undefeated, and that is all that matters. And you got to say they had their wake-up call as well. Last week, maybe getting a bit complacent, they got to kick up the arse from the Sunwolves, who was attacking immenseness. Almost shocked them into their first defeat, but they still come away with it, which shows the tenacity of a good team like the Stormers are. They got some quality, they got some stars, and they're performing. That's all you can really ask from your team. Doesn't matter if you're playing the Chiefs, the Sunwolves, the Brumbies, or the Kings. It's all the same. You got to bring the performance. You got to get the win. That's what the Stormers have done. So I can't fault the Stormers whatsoever about how they're playing. Their forwards are performing well. Their back row, I think, is performing exceptionally well. They were pretty menacing last week against the Sunwolves as well. And really the test for the Stormers is going to come when they come to New Zealand. That's really going to be it, or vice versa, New Zealand teams going over to South Africa as well. That's going to be the test. That is a big test for the Stormers. If they can get some wins, if they can get points out of New Zealand, they've got to be a big threat for later on in this tournament. They'll have the top spot in their conference if they can nab that and get into a home match to start off. You know, we're talking a long way away here, but I think a lot of people are looking at New Zealand sides here as a benchmark, and they're forgetting about teams like the Stormers, who could still do something special in Super Rugby in 2017. They're up against the Cheetahs, and oh my god, oh, the Cheetahs! The Cheetahs. Now, I know a lot of you out there Cheetahs fans as well, and I do read your comments every single time you make them on these videos, but boy oh boy, how do you support the Cheetahs? Goodness me, they had to be the most frustrating team in Super Rugby. They can be so good, and they can also be so frustratingly inconsistent as well. We've talked about their consistency before this season, but a lot last season, and I thought they had some promise this year, but yes, they've had a lot of injuries. They've had a lot of players missing. They've had them coming back. They've had others going away. That happens to everyone. I get that. That is happening. But goodness me, they're changing their team like they're changing their socks. It's amazing how they can continue to change so many players and still get some sort of consistent flow and performance out of the team. That's got to be a credit to them, but that credit doesn't put wins on the board. I think they should have beaten the Sharks last weekend, although I picked against them. They were in the position to do it, and they really should have put that one away. Also, like we talked about just before, questioning that decision at the end not to go for that losing bonus point is just bizarre as well. That was kind of strange, and I don't know why they wouldn't want that bonus point as well, especially in a position when you can't win the game. And looking at the table here, where the Cheetahs are sitting in the conference behind the Stormers, which is tough straight away, and you look at that conference with the Stormers on 4 out of 4 and the Cheetahs 2 wins and 3 losses, it does really put the pressure on them to actually continue that performance, you know, and to try catch that up is going to be extremely difficult for the Cheetahs to do as well. I think they're always going to be a threat though. They're definitely always a threat. The Cheetahs, a good enough team, we know. We've talked about it 100 times. Their team is good enough, but they just don't seem to perform at their best, and they have so many players in and out each week that it's almost a lottery as to who's going to be starting. At the time of recording this, I don't think they have named their team just yet, but we will hopefully see if they can get some of their better players, their first teamers, their first picks back on the field, get that kind of resemblance of their first team back, see some good performances like they did for the first 60 or so minutes against the Sharks. We could have the Cheetahs back in action, and it might be time to start picking them again. I thought they might have done it against the Sharks because I picked the Sharks, but thankfully for my picks, they did not. I'm going to go with the Stormers again, however, here. I just think the Stormers are going to be too good. Big match, though, this one for that African Conference group with the 2 top teams going up. The Cheetahs really need to win this if they're going to have any hope of making it through as top qualifier from their conference. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty tough for them to get a wildcard spot coming out of that pool. But always a threat. Injuries have killed them. Let's see if they can recover. But I've got the Stormers by 9. Just 2 games to go. Yeah, we're flying through them quite quickly here this week. The Lions versus the Sharks. And the Lions, you got to say, out of their last 3 out of their last 4 games, they've put 40 or more points on their opposition. That's attacking masterclass for you. They put on attacking lessons for their opponents. You can argue that and say they've had a pretty good run of late coming up against teams like the Reds and the Kings, etc. But again, just like the Stormers, you can only beat what's put in front of you, and to put points on them as well has to be important to really get that attack going. They've had Yankees back last week as well, which is a huge boost for them as well to have those players. Their back row back performing again. I think they've missed a bit of Tecklenburg this season, missing out after retiring, but they've got some good quality class in there. Are they going to be the team of last year? Is the big question. They've shown they can do it. I mean, those 3 performances where they've copped up 40 points is a telling tale, but can they convert that in the long term consistently through injuries, through everything, and get performances done is going to be the key. They are back at home, however. They're up against the Sharks, which that's got to be tough. A very good defensive team against a very good attacking team. It's almost the best attack versus the best defense, and you've got to decide and pick which is going to give more. Will the Sharks defense give a little bit and allow all the Lions to score points, or will the Sharks show that little bit of attack that they have in patches throughout the last few months and show that they could do that against a weaker Lions defensive team? That's got to be the pick, and it's going to be a tough one to really pick out which of those is going to go, because both are very good in their specialised area, and you think if you combine the two, you'd get a nice little team. But no, that's not how rugby works, is it? So as for the Sharks, I'm pretty impressed by the Sharks. I'll be completely honest. I doubted them. Again, the defensive side, they can't attack, but they seem to accumulate points very, very well. They get themselves on the scoreboard, they get in good positions, they take points on offer. They've got a young man there. I mean, this Bosch kid has been brilliant for them. Once again, they unearth another good talent. The Sharks do this season after season. Injury-prone players, bang, get out of here. Let's give this young kid a go. Chuck him in there. Let's see what he can do. Bang! Another star is unearthed for the Sharks. And for them to come away last week with a win away versus the Cheetahs. Now, we just talked about the Cheetahs, but that is no easy feat to come away from the Cheetahs with a victory as well. So you've got to give some to the Sharks there as well. They did score 38 points, which, I mean, you don't say a badly attacking team scores 38 points, you know. You've got to say that they actually did show some good attacking ability. And like I talked about earlier, they have improved week on week on week, which is great for the Sharks. They are starting to become a real threat against all comers as well. Overseas teams going to South Africa to play the Sharks, there's a chance they could put in a big upset there as well. This is my pick for game of the weekend, I think, and what I think is going to happen here will be goal kicking to be the deciding factor. Misses a goal. The game could be that close that a few misses or a few of those risky ones from a long way out could decide this fixture, and with it I'm going to go the Lions. Yes, the Lions by 10, but I wouldn't be shocked to wake up and see the Sharks have pulled this one out of the bag. Last game of the weekend, and it's on Sunday. How bizarre. A game on Sunday, about 6 p.m. New Zealand time it kicks off. I'm not complaining, but it's a Sunday game. I'm all for that. Bring us more of those Sunday games, just not too early though. Wait till us who have to work on Sunday are finished, and then we can get into the action of rugby on Sunday nights. But a nice Sunday game. It's refreshing. It's good to see. Of course, daylight saving, oh goodness me. Yeah, that's going to stuff things up, isn't it? We have to change the clocks back. Have to change that. Go there earlier. Take later. Screw daylight saving. Anyway, Sunday match. Nice to see. Welcoming stuff between the Waratahs and the Crusaders. Let's start with the home team. The Waratahs. Terrible. Dreadful. Woeful. I just don't enjoy watching the Waratahs. Their style of rugby, not very fun to watch. It's not very exciting, it's not exhilarating, it's not even clinical. They just seem to run around like headless chickens until something works. It's something they've done from the start of the season. Even if you're a fan of the Waratahs, you cannot tell me that they play an attractive style of rugby. You cannot tell me that they play an exciting rugby, that they aim to win and score tries. Not saying they try to lose, but they just don't seem to have an idea what they're doing. Daryl Gibson, he's been coaching that team in one way or another for quite some time, but he just doesn't seem to have a clue about what he's really doing here. Is it him? Is it the players? I mean, you've got players like Will Skelton, which probably doesn't share much of an idea between him and his two right feet, but how does this team operate? I don't understand how they can really get victories at all. The last week, of course, against Rebels, I'd say they'll be signing off a big, nice, fat check for Mr. Referee for saving them on that one. That last-minute yellow card in the last 10, really saving their bacon. And when you look at this Australian conference, I mean, it is terrible. Let's take a little look at it now. Brumbies, 5 games, 2 wins, 3 losses. Waratahs, 5 games, 2 wins, 3 losses. Reds, 1-3. Force, 1-3. Rebels, 0-4. No Australian team has a plus on their wins versus losses. They've all lost more games than they've won. That is remarkable. That is just amazing how a team, a whole country of teams, especially Australia, can perform so poorly. Now, it's the worst time for them as well. For all this talk about Super Rugby getting changed and whatever, this is the worst time for a whole conference to be underperforming. But that's all we're talking about at conference at the moment. We're talking about this one-off game between the Waratahs and the Crusaders. Australian rugby is summed up by that conference, and really they're coming up against the Crusaders, a team that showed that they can play for 80 minutes. They were amazing, destroying the Force last weekend, and they now have to be considered dangerous. They now have to be considered contenders, serious contenders as well. They can win from behind, they can come back from a poor start, they can control from the beginning, control to the end. They don't lose games in the last 20 minutes of the match. They win games in the last 20 minutes. If they're not winning already, they'll be winning by the end. They just don't seem to know how to lose. It's very Crusaders-like, but we normally see a poor start from them in the season. Not this year. That's how good this Crusaders team have been. They were completely dominant against the Force. It was an emphatic victory, and you just got to say, it's going to be tough to beat them. You've got to look at this and go, when are they playing the Chiefs? When are they playing the Hurricanes? That's got to be the matches that we're all waiting to see. That's going to be the matches we will see whether Crusaders are actually full-on contenders or not. That'll be the games where we can say, here, you know, they've come back from 20 points down against the Chiefs. That is something. That is where they're going to be really, really judged. I do expect the Waratahs to lift. They seem to always enjoy playing the Crusaders, and it seems to always lift their game up another notch. So I do expect them to play a little bit better, but just the Crusaders we've seen this year are just ridiculously good. And I can't see the Waratahs even getting close to them, and I demand a big Crusaders victory for this matchup. I'm going Crusaders by 23. Little resistance from the Waratahs at the start, but I think we're going to see another clinical destruction of Waratahs rugby by the Crusaders. So that wraps it up. That is the full 7 matches for round 6 of Super Rugby. I hope you've all enjoyed the video here today. I hope you've all got your picks in for the SuperBru as well. I'll check that again before we wrap this up to see if we can get a bit of a tally on the Fantasy Team League. But if not, check it out yourself and we'll have a recap next week, hopefully, and see how those are looking for the fantasy teams. So thank you all for tuning in and watching. Hope you have enjoyed today's preview video. Have a great weekend watching the games in action, and I hope your team goes well for your viewing pleasure. But until next time, thank you all for watching and take care.